Hey guys, I'm Ben, and welcome to another episode of Epoch of Greatness. On today's episode, we're going to look at one of my favorite Swedish technical death metal bands, and that is the mighty Theory in Practice. Theory in Practice formed in 1995 in Sandviken, Sweden, as a trio with Peter Lake on guitar, Matthias Engström on bass and keyboards, and Henrik Olsen on drums. Henrik Olsen would later go on to, of course, play with, who was it again? Scar Symmetry, I think, right? Anyway, they, quickly developed this very ambitious style, which was rooted in technical death metal, with frequent time changes, plenty of progressive touches, and complex compositions. The music is often compared to progressive technical innovators as well, such as Atheist, Cynic, and Nocturnus, but with a uniquely Swedish twist that really blends melodic sensibilities with extreme complexity. And they do it in a really unique way as well. Just like those other bands, one of the gripes that I often have with the modern metal scene is that there's just so much generic shit out there, so much just copying what has been done in the past, and very little cutting edge, very little on the cutting edge, at least very little on the cutting edge that I'm interested in anyway. I mean, and I've bitched about that in other videos as well, but there's so many bands who basically are just cloning the bands of the past and trying to sound like them. Well, this era of this early 90s era of the birth of progressive and technical death metal really yielded a lot of really original sounding bands like Atheist, Cynic, and Nocturnus. They all sound nothing alike, and Theory in Practice really fits into that as well. Also bands like Pestilence and stuff like that. So, they all had their unique approach to being progressive and being technical. Of course, there's some shared attributes here. People often attribute like a jazzy sound or maybe classical influences or stuff like that. Usually it's people like who don't know what jazz is or what classical music is really. But that's another gripe I won't get into right now. Anyway, let's get into some of their material. Actually, we'll go through all of it because really this is a band that really has never put a foot wrong, in my opinion, and everything that they've put out is worth having a look at. So with that in mind, let's start at the beginning. In 1996, so they formed in 1995, they wrote and rehearsed a whole bunch of material for about a year, and then in 1996, they went into Abyss Studios, which is Peter Tankgren's from Hypocrisy's studio, and they recorded their first demo called Submissive. So Submissive really helped the band to secure their first record deal with Pulverized Record because it really had a strong underground reception. It showcased early signs of their technical ambition, fast riffs, complex patterns, and an experimental edge, which was really uncommon for demos of that time. Some of the musical characteristics were that it was extremely raw, chaotic rhythm changes, a heavier focus on groove plus tech death, more than fully formed progressive structures per se. And you had early hints of what would become the band's signature technical style. One of the interesting things that helped the demo gain a lot of credibility is the fact that it was recorded at Abyss Studios, which of course was, you know, a notable hub for a lot of Swedish metal acts. And so it helped really give the band and the demo a lot of credibility, and it was very popular. Anyway, only a year later, the band was ready to enter the studio, this time at the famed Sunlight Studios in Stockholm, to record in 1997 their debut album, Third Eye Function. So this is the official debut following the success of Submissive. Here they have singer-guitarist John Ekman appearing before also departing in 1997. The album really combines sort of like almost like a melodic death metal foundation with frequent, you know, progressive leanings as well. But even though it's melodic death metal, it doesn't sound anything like the other, you know, Gothenburg sort of bands. You know, it's like much harsher. It does have a lot of those sort of neoclassical melodies in there as well. But there's also a lot of things that are like pushing outside of that framework as well. Like they bring in sort of these like almost science fiction movie soundtrack lines, you know, and it has a sort of cinema scope to it, you know. There's a lot of keyboards intertwined with the lead guitars. That is a prominent feature of the band, and it's on full display, you know, right from the beginning. There's also distinctive time signature shifts and layered riffing going on. Really, really cool, really interesting album. And I think, you know, they would, like what seems to have happened with these guys is that each album, they progressively get more refined in what they're doing. But it's always, it's unlike a lot of like Melodeath, which can sound a little weak in my opinion. I'm not the biggest Melodeath fan, so I'm sorry if I've offended you, but, you know, too fucking bad. But it still has this, like, it's still fucking heavy, you know. It's just and it's really intense. It's like, because it's constantly driving forward and harsh, and they're not like, they're using the technicality to make it more extreme, you know. So it's to me it sounds a lot heavier and more intense than any other, like anything that you could call melodic death metal or Melodeath, you know. You know, the production itself on this album was deliberately raw. You know, they deliberately did it like that to really sort of try and capture the live intensity of the band, and I think that really worked beautifully. You know, on this album, you can see that they're really laying the groundwork for their more technical evolution, which is each album is going to ramp up in technicality as well, and playing skill and all of that stuff as well. anyway, in 1999, the band would head back into the studio, this time to record the incredible The Armageddon Theories. So this one was released on Pulverized Records, but later reissued later by Listenable Records out of France. Henrik Olsen, the drummer, took over the lead vocals in addition to drums on this one. It's much more technical and chaotic than the debut. You've got really intricate guitar work with rapid tempo fluctuations. There's long-form suite pieces here, like the title track, which has these multiple movements, like, you know, in a sort of classical way or in a progressive rock kind of way, which is sort of blending progressive death, and there's even little black metal elements as well in there. This album has become something of a cult classic in the tech death community for its technicality and its ambition, and it's easy to see why, because the songwriting has. I really love Third Eye Function very much, and I find it really hard to pick like a favorite album from these guys, because it's always the album that I'm listening to at the time that is my favorite. But I think the songwriting has leveled up here, and I think, like, objectively, Armageddon Theories is a better album. Probably, you know what? I'm even uncomfortable to say that. I'll leave it up to you to decide. You know, go check it out. Both albums are extremely awesome, though, and, you know, worth checking out and worth owning. One of the things that you know, I think is so important to highlight with this band is the incredible guitar work from Peter Lake. I mean, the guy is an absolute beast of a guitar player. A big part of this band really is the soloing, and, you know, one thing I'm very partial to is great musicians playing great stuff, and you know, doing it in a way that has its own unique characteristic and has something to say. And I feel like Peter Lake is one of those guitarists. He's one of my favorite shredders for sure. He just has the sickest lines, total control, and, you know, of course, total speed and, you know, blazing mastery at the same time as well. So, you know, I'm a huge fan of his work, and it's a major feature of the band's, you know, sound as well. Like some bands, you know, some technical bands these days kind of just rely too much on the guitar soloing and stuff like that without really writing an interesting song to go with it. But that's certainly not the case with Theory and Practice. The songs themselves are really great, and then when you get all this lead playing in there as well, it just lifts everything, and the composition lifts with it, you know. So it all takes off together, and it's just soaring and powerful and incredible stuff. Anyway, it's a fantastic album. Definitely go check it out. Next, we go forward a few years to 2002. They head back into the studios, this time on Listenable Records, and we get Colonizing the Sun. This time recorded in the band's own studio. It's considered probably their most accessible album due to the tighter songwriting, and it's probably a little less harsh overall sonically. The focus really was more on having, it was more structured and melodic compositions, while retaining, of course, the technical prowess. It's slightly less chaotic than Armageddon Theories, I would say, with stronger, more memorable hooks, probably. The vocals get a bit more higher pitched and more sort of dramatic, maybe, on this one. Although, like, I don't think it's like a major difference, but the main thing is that the overall sense of the album is a little bit more. I think it's right to say that it's a little bit more accessible. And if you're someone who you like death metal, but you maybe you don't like it too extreme or something like that, or you want to find an easy way in with these guys, this is a good place to start, I would say. Colonizing the Sun. It's a fantastic album. The title track and others were noted for their memorable riffs and melodic solos by fans and by reviewers alike. And after this release, the band would enter a long hiatus, unfortunately. But this album itself is absolutely incredible. It's another masterpiece from these guys. Every single song, and on some of my other videos, I've picked songs to highlight, and I'll drop some songs at the beginning and the end of each of these albums, like as I'm talking about them. But I haven't even decided which ones I want to pick, because every song on these albums is perfect. Like I love the whole album, every single song. So I'll have to think about what I want to highlight there. Normally I'll pick a few and tell you about it, but basically all the way that I've described the albums, it relates to pretty much every single song. Every song on this album is they're taking the theory and practice formula and they've tightened it right up, and they've perfected it to the point of, but also ramped up their technicality. Like they keep getting better at playing, and it shows in the music and in the composition. A really, really remarkable album. I absolutely love it. Unfortunately, that they would go on into a long hiatus. I don't really know why, but they would sort of disappear for something like 13 years or something like that. So, for most of us who were fans of the band, we just assumed that was it. We're never going to hear from them again. But in 2015, they popped back up again with a single called Evolving Transhumanism. So this was a single, but there's two tracks on it. It was like I said, the first release in more than a decade, like 13 years, and it got a lot of people very excited in the tech death world, myself included. Um, People really saw this as kind of like a teaser that the band was renewing their activity and they were coming back and sort of modernizing. And you know, on these tracks, the band really maintains the band's complex musical identity. Again, I don't think I mentioned this before, but most of their stuff has a lot of like science fiction and science and philosophical concepts and stuff like that. And that sort of continues with this one. And so, we all got kind of excited, like, wow, their theory and practice is back and they're still sounding great, still sounding absolutely incredible. We would have to wait another 2 years though. And then we got an EP, right? So I was kind of hoping we'd get a full album from these guys. And it's a shame that we didn't, because this EP I think is great. And that is Crescendo Design. So this was the first extended release after the long hiatus. It's an EP. There's 5 tracks on there. It retains the technicality, but definitely with a noticeably more modern death metal style to it, sound. More modern production sound. I guess it's a little bit cleaner, a little bit fuller sounding, fatter sounding. The way more modern productions sort of fill out the whole sonic landscape these days. And it's just, I'm not bitching necessarily about this recording, but just in general, everything modern stuff tends to push everything so that, when you look at the sound wave, it's just like a big block, there's no dips and valleys and shit. There's no dynamics in the music anymore. And there's, but that being said, there's such an incredible band that even with the modern production, which I'm generally not the biggest fan of, bitched about it a lot, maybe unfairly in some cases, and maybe I've been too much of a fucking grumpy old head about that. But I think also that there's a lot of shitty sounding metal out there these days because of the production and because it's all copying and all that shit that I've complained about a million times. I won't go into it again. You got again, they're bringing in all the science fiction stuff, the abstract concepts. Rather than your typical death metal Satanism or serial killers or gruesome shit, which is all fun and games. All not complaining about any of that. Of course, that's all part of death metal. But to be honest, like I've never really cared that much about the lyrics of death metal. For me, it's always been about the music, the sound of the music. That's what I'm interested in. You had Trevor Strand from the Black Dahlia Murder do some guest vocals on Cryobiological Expansion. And you know, this really showcased the band's adaptation to contemporary metal, while I would still say staying loyal to their roots. You know, they really didn't sell out or change in a major way. They just kind of upgraded the sound itself without changing the character of the music too much. And I really appreciate that. And the only thing that the only complaint I would have about Crescendo Design is that I can't fucking say it. No, it's only a EP and not a full length album. That would have been much cooler, of course. And I honestly don't know if we'll ever hear anything else from these guys. It'd be cool if they did, but you know, it's almost 10 years again. Like at this point in the game, I don't know if that's even possible. But Peter Lake and the guys, if you're watching this by any chance, you know, and you have any more fuel in the tank, we'd love to hear more from you guys. I'm a massive fan. I love their work. I think they're respected enough amongst the sort of diehard tech death fans, but I think overall they are underrated. You know, a lot of people talk about bands like Necrophagist or Spawn of Possession, bands like this, you know, who are kind of like the, you know, the, what's the word I'm looking for here? They're the embodiment of what modern tech death is, and all the modern tech death bands kind of copied from them. But for me, like, Theory and Practice leaves them in the dust. You know, I mean, I'm not a big Necrophagist fan anyway. I do like Theory. I do like Spawn of Possession, but I just think, like, overall, yeah, Theory and Practice leaves them in the dust when it comes to technical death metal. And for me, they're right up there with those other bands that I mentioned before, like Atheist and Nocturnus. I think they deserve to be in that well, maybe we'll call it the big four of technical death metal or something like that, of the original technical death metal, not what it is today. But that's the thing. That's the cool thing about Theory and Practice, is that they're from that first wave. But as far as like the ramping up of technicality that you got with those bands like Necrophagist and Spawn of Possession and all the others that came after, all the Faceless and, you know, all the Fallujahs and the Infuries and all of those that came afterwards, all the fucking Arcspires and all that shit, right? Like, these guys can hang with them as well on, and are as technically amazing as well, you know. And so that's what's really interesting about Theory and Practice, is that they really bridge the foundations of technical death metal and what it is today, and can easily hang with all of them. And they deserve to be remembered for being one of the greatest of the genre. So that's why I'm making this video today. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Stay metal, and I'll see you next time.